Hey you guys, this is Sasha and welcome back to another Sit and Sip. Today I'm coming to you with this video because today is October 15th, which is Pregnancy, Loss, and Infant Awareness Month. And today is Awareness Day, and we light a wave of candles to symbolize all the babies and that are gone too soon. And so I have my candle lit in the background. It's scented birthday cake, in case anybody wants to know. But more importantly, maybe about a month and a half, almost 2 months ago, one of my subscribers asked a very I feel like it was a really important question about how do you help someone who has had a loss, be it a miscarriage, be it a stillbirth, be it an infant death. And I really needed to take some time in order to gather my thoughts, because I know whatever I put out there, I want it to, one, be helpful, two, not offend anyone, and three, I'm very much aware that when you put things on social media, they are lasting. So I wanted it to be something that could help someone who has suffered a loss, 50 years ago, 5 years ago, or 5 days ago, like all in that span. So I really needed to take some time to think about it. I am going to include this disclaimer before I jump into the discussion about this is very sensitive and there is no right or wrong approach. And so I am primarily going to speak from my experiences. And when I say my experiences, I don't mean like everything that I went through, but I have interacted with a lot of people who have had miscarriages, other parents who have had stillbirths, and people who have lost children as well, like early infant death, like before the first year of life. And so everything has its own category. And again, there is no right or wrong answer. But I was really just strongly encouraged this morning to make this video, especially after hitting the 1 year mark of my daughter, Shalaya. It just was really on my heart and mind to do today. So first of all I will have to start off with acknowledgement. When it comes to dealing with people and grief in general, you have to acknowledge that everybody's grief is their own. It's like their own story. We all have different fingerprints. We all have different amount of hair strands. Even if you're twins, your genetic makeup is not iconic to your twin. Everything is always slightly tailored to that individual, and grief is no different. My husband Curtis and I experienced the exact same loss. We both lost our first child, which is our daughter, Shalaya, yet our griefs were different. We had similar experience. We had the exact experience in terms of who we lost, but not the exact same grief. And it's important to recognize that, because you've got to tailor each situation to an individual. And so, case in point, there are some bereaved parents, depending on how long ago their loss was, that choose not to talk about it. They are very much aware that it has occurred and they appreciate the sympathies, but they need no further discussions. They don't go to groups. They don't go to counseling. They just deal with it either with them and their partner or internally, and that is as much as you will see. And that does not mean that that's wrong. That is right for that individual. There are also some people who do all the opposite. They go to grief groups, they go to counseling, they are very much present in their grief. And when I say present in their grief, they're not ashamed to have pictures. They're not ashamed to say their child's name. They're very vocal about it. They choose the role to educate other people about their experience to help someone else. And again, there's no right or wrong reason on why you would choose one versus the other than personal preference. I really enjoy going to groups, support groups of people who have lost either with miscarriage, stillbirth, or infant death, because when you are pregnant and you and your partner find out about that pregnancy, I think everybody envisions the life that that child is going to have. And I am a kind of person in my grief that even though that child never lived a day here outside of the womb, does not mean that I know how to channel to deal with what am I going to do with all those hopes and dreams, and needing that dialogue with other people who are in very similar situations, just processing how to get through day by day. But back to how to deal with the individuals instead of how we are individually grieving. A lot of times people are very uncomfortable with grief. It is easier to rejoice with someone to be in their sorrows. And it's not because we are people who don't care. I mean, there are some people who don't care, but it's not that we are naturally are people who don't care. It is a very sensitive subject, no matter if it's someone's grandparent or parent or brother or sister, you know, even the family pet. It is never easy to address grief because grief makes so many people uncomfortable, even myself. For as much grief as I have experienced, that does not make it easier for me to have a dialogue with someone else, even if they've had a stillbirth. Because it naturally, for some people, there are feelings that they haven't dealt with that it brings up, or feelings that they have dealt with that, again, it brings up. Grief can channel a web of emotions. And in grief group, one of the things that I have learned over this last almost year of attending is grief is like a spider web. And when you have a loss, there's no way that you can take a part of the spider web and it not affect the rest of the web. Everything will still shift and reposition itself, even if you're trying not to have it affect other components of your life. It does. And so when you're dealing with friends or family, I always encourage people to get a feel for how they're grieving. If they're not really talking about it, it is perfectly okay to ask someone, how are you doing? And if they seem to really engage in that conversation, you know, maybe you want to continue. Maybe they say very little and you ask again and they still say very little. Then that's kind of sending you a signal that they're not ready in their process of grief, because grief is a continual thing. It doesn't have a start and a stop. You don't know when it's going to start and you don't know when it's going to stop. Sometimes that's like signals for you, hey, you know, they're not ready. And so they'll let you know when they're ready. It might be, you know, years down the road. But again, that acknowledgement is so pivotal in the grief journey. And I know that a lot of you have known someone who has lost a child, or have lost a child yourself, or have had a miscarriage. That is still a loss. It is very disheartening when I have people who I'm talking to and they feel like because they didn't make it to the point where they knew the gender, that it wasn't a significant loss. And it is. I mean, your hopes and dreams in my mind start at conception. As soon as I saw those 2 lines, or that pregnant, or that plus sign, my mind was already thinking about all the things that I would want to do with this child. And so to invalidate the fact that they have all the hopes and dreams and just didn't make it that far, to me is quite a shame. I know that people are going to have their own views when it comes to that, and that is that's perfectly fine. I always encourage people just to make sure you are very, very sensitive, because some people's journey is taking them years to get pregnant, for it to end in a miscarriage, or years to get pregnant for it to end in a late miscarriage, or a stillbirth, or you know, a chromosomal defect that their child is not expected to live that long. Is very sensitive no matter where you're starting from. And another thing that is so imperative is people that you have depended on for your grief in the past may not be the ones who give you comfort during the grief of losing a child. And I say that because this is normally the number one issue that comes up, excuse me, on the different forums and things that I am in. And that is dealing with the fact that sometimes you expect for a mom and a dad or grandparents or siblings or people that you know who have also lost a child to be able to be that support. And sometimes they just can't. And sometimes people who have never lost a child, never had a miscarriage, never had a stillbirth, are great advocates and support for what you are going through, because it gives you an ear to listen. And people get so offended when their family cannot support them in the way that they want to be supported. I have gone through it. I know a lot of my associates and friends have gone through it, and it's very difficult. Like, this was what I would say is a really thin line without offending someone that you love, but letting them know that maybe it's not the most beneficial at this time for your grief. And hopefully this is not confusing. There are people in your family who might have experienced a stillbirth or a miscarriage or very similar situations to you. And depending on the generation, they might not have been told to talk about it. And so when you come all needing to talk and get it out, some people just don't grieve like that. And it's not that they are being heartless or careless. It's that some folks don't ever deal with their grief in that manner. They kind of just don't address it, and then it gets easier with time. And again, there's no right or wrong way. But if you're a person who is looking for someone to talk every single day, that just might not be them. Don't be offended that that's not where they're at. I rather respect someone who is being honest about meeting me where they realistically are than for you to try to pacify me and do something that you don't feel comfortable with. Because I might need someone who can talk with me at 2 a.m. in the morning because I'm just missing my child. I'm still bleeding or still going through or in the midst of funeral arrangements, or Christmas is coming up, or their first birthday or day they would have graduated. And sometimes you just need a friend or someone to talk to that will understand and will sit on the phone and listen to you cry and listen to your hopes and dreams, and doesn't necessarily have to respond, because again, there is no right or wrong. Like, everybody's journey is different, but you need to know where you need people at and who's going to meet you there. So if I'm up here and my friend's down here, we're not on the same page. That's not going to be effective for me or for them. It'll get you more frustrated than anything else. And unfortunately, people want, like, what should I do? What should I do? You kind of have to sit and observe. Like, I really can't be more precise than that. If they're reluctant in the conversation at the beginning, wait a while, wait a few weeks, maybe wait a month. You know, there's always things that you can see. See how they're doing. You know, do they have a picture of their child out? Normally when people have memorabilia, like in their homes or in their work or in their car, because I have them in all 3 locations, it normally signals that it is okay to bring up that child and to ask about that child. In fact, those are normally visual cues that say, hey, I am open about my child. You can ask me about my son or daughter and it's okay. Or they might have ultrasounds that they have out, or post something on their social media. And again, those are all little signs that they are more comfortable to address it. It may not be like an everyday thing, but it is okay to have that dialogue. When it comes to when it first happens, always take the approach of, I had a representative for me. And when I say representative, it was my husband. And so there was a moment in there where I couldn't handle it. And so I had someone let it be known that I'm okay. And then I could slowly weed in the other time. Because remember, this is overwhelming. Your mind is not catching up to everything that has just happened. So if somebody is just experiencing a loss, I would always say that you need to give them a little bit of time to process. Maybe wait to the service or the memorial, or, you know, until they mention it, and then you just come and support. So if it's a candlelight visual, if it's a memorial service, if it's the funeral, be there and be present, because they're letting it be known that they're having those events. But you're just coming to support. It's not always a time to have verbal discussion. Simple things like, hey, I'm here for you. Super, super easy. And again, it makes you present in the moment. And then you can engage in further dialogue later down the road when they have had more time to process their grief and what all has happened. Because again, it is a personal journey for everyone. It could be the same child, and grandma, auntie, grandpa, uncle, mom, dad, siblings, cousins are all processing that grief differently. And how you address each person is going to vary and always come from a sincere place. I can't stress that enough. When you are going through, you can tell when people care and when they don't. And if they're starting to get short with you, it is perfectly okay to pull back, because grief makes people irrational. And so, yes, it might strain a little bit, but if they can sense that genuineness from you, then it'll come back together. And I'm hoping that this makes sense. Like I said, this has been a very difficult discussion because there's no right or wrong answer. But I know a lot of the times when I struggle in this last year, these are the different discussions that I would have between my personal therapist, support group, family, and friends and coworkers. And I chose the approach to make it a learning experience. So if I could sense that someone didn't know how to approach me, I had the choice to make it more comfortable for them, because unfortunately, and I told my husband this, when it comes to loss, I always search on like social media, normally once a month, and see if there's no new postings. And I have not, since October of 2015 till October 2016, found a month where there has been no new losses. And so this thing is still happening. We just got to work with people and meet them where they're at, so that it is going to be more helpful in the long run. And we can do our best with this super unfortunate situation that these babies are, they're gone too soon. Like, that literally is the best way to describe this whole month in Infant and Awareness Day, that these children are gone too soon. And it is much easier for the mind to process burying someone who was older, or losing someone who was older, than losing someone who seems like, in most people's eyes, that they barely got a chance to live. So seeing that this is always a dialogue, like I said, I'm not a guru. There's no right or wrong answers. I'm very interested, for those of you who have encountered someone who has had a loss, no matter if it was recent or several years ago, what is some advice? You know, a lot of the times I go to people's videos when I'm looking through, and I look at, you know, the comments that are being stated, and the comments can be just as pivotal as the video on helping people. So, you know, what are some things that you feel like are beneficial to help people who are going through the loss of a child, no matter if it's miscarriage, stillbirth, or early infant death? We really need to start getting this dialogue going, because until there's more research, you know, I say this all the time, research changes people's views. Before my daughter passed, my understanding of infant loss and stillbirth and miscarriage was very minimal. And, you know, as we raise the awareness more, I think that people will find, one, maybe it means to be able to help and make more preventative measures, even tips in the doctor's office. Things like that can help the community as well as build a community, because there are so many people. There are literally hundreds in my city and in my county who have occurred within the last 5 years. Hundreds in the last 5 years. And so I'm really interested to see what you guys all have to say. I appreciate you watching. I hope this didn't come off as a ramble. I prayed before I made this video, again, because this is such a sensitive topic. But seeing it today as Awareness Month, what better way to raise awareness than to get this discussion going and having it out there? And maybe we can have a follow-up, or maybe one of you will make a video response and you'll tag me in it saying, hey, this is what I went through and these are some great ways, or these are some tips. You know, whatever we can do to just help people in this such unfortunate situation. So I thank you so much for watching, and sorry. I'll see you in the next video, and I hope you have a wonderful and blessed day. Bye.